For those of you who are not familiar with
Sorry.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Downtown's Next Step, it's a visioning project, imagining what the next phase of our main street in downtown Durango could look like. And there was extensive public outreach. I think we had over 1,200 individual points of community feedback for this survey, nearly 30 community outreach meetings to gather community input to help direct and guide that visioning. So I just wanted to give you a little snapshot of kind of where we are right now. That first phase visioning was then handed off to a phase 2 to our multimodal department and transportation. And they're really getting into the nuts and bolts of how feasible is a project like this in Durango. They're looking at the utilities, they're looking at the actual engineering specs to see what's under this almost 200-year-old main street of ours that would kind of set the course for future timeline of moving forward with a project like this. So right now, they're again in the nuts and bolts phase. Hopefully by the end of winter 22, we'll have a traffic study complete. And then by spring of 23, we're hoping to have a little bit more of a finite timeline to be able to share with the public to again engage in another round of public feedback. I'm going to go over just some frequently asked questions that we've been receiving, as well as the images that you're going to see. Those were results of that first phase, kind of conceptual design. By no means are these final designs, but just to give folks an idea of what do widened sidewalks look like? What do mid-street crossings look like? What do corner bulb outs look like? So during my blabbering, feel free to daydream about this is the scene outside of the main mall here. Speaking of malls, one of the big questions that we've been getting is, are we designing a pedestrian mall? Are we going to close Main Ave down to cars? No, that is not the plan. That was one of the things that was brought to the conceptual phase and design process of Downtown's Next Step, and it's not a project that we're going to move forward with. There's very few examples of where pedestrian malls have successfully been implemented across the U.S., and Durango is not going to be one of them. Will this project remove parking on Main Ave? Just to give you an idea of the changes that will occur on Main Ave, there will be more parking available than parking spaces removed during the annual bump out program. So just to give you an idea of what the parking scope on Main Ave will look like, there will be more parking available than when bump outs are deployed on Main Ave during the summer months. Another big question we've been getting is questions about our historic facades and the actual look of the buildings on Main Ave. And the big answer is we will not be touching the facades of our historic downtown. These changes are only going to be implemented onto the streetscape. So again, widening sidewalks, bulb outs, mid-street crossings, improving accessibility, better transit access, things of that nature. But the historic facades is going to be one of the main priorities of preserving the historic character of Main Street Durango. And how is this project being paid for? Currently, the phase 2 of this project that we're in was allocated by City Council in our Transportation's 2022 budget via the 2015 half-cent sales tax. And then when will this project be constructed? We don't have a finite timeline yet of when they're going to break ground. Like I mentioned, we're in that nuts and bolts phase right now of looking at the underbelly of Main Ave and actually figuring out what it would take to engineer a project of this size and scope. So we don't have a solid answer for this yet. We're hoping that by spring of 23, we might have at least a conceptual idea of when this would be phased in. So thanks for letting me blabber at you a little bit about Downtown's Next Step. What I'm going to do now is just a quick plug for our Midtown Peak Grant. This is a program of our Midtown URA. This is a map of our Midtown URA, the Urban Renewal Authority or Urban Renewal Partnership you may hear it be referred to. And we have a fantastic grant program that took place in 2022 and is going to be rolled out and expanded in 23. We're offering We have a pot of about $200,000 of grant funding for projects taking place in the Midtown URA area. And the goal of this grant is to help you improve your property. With any sort of public facing property improvement is a cost that would be eligible for the Midtown Peak Grant. In 2022, we had 3 projects, all funded at about $50,000. Right on the corner of 12th and Main, if you want to take a look at Catacombs Fitness right now, they're finishing up the second phase of their construction that was funded largely in part by the Midtown Peak Grant. We had roof replacements, we had repainting, we had landscaping and drainage improvements. But the goal of the Midtown Peak Grant is how can we better activate some of the underutilized areas within Midtown, and how can the city come to the table and help partner with you to make that happen, potentially give you that extra push to make you want to redevelop, or if you're one area that we're trying to focus on this year is if you're thinking of selling a property, or maybe you have a property on the market and you want to try to make some updates and some changes for a buyer specific use. Please come to us. Let us know how we might be able to help. We really want to try to activate that Midtown area as best we can. And like Scott was saying earlier, how can we approach that in a partnership forward manner to better serve our community and better activate our Midtown area. So if you want to dig into the nuts and bolts of that grant, or you have any projects in mind, come grab me after. I'd be happy to chat. But thanks for your time today, and I'll keep it rolling. If you have any questions, come grab me after. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tommy, for the update. We're going to Mayor Clark Craig from Nashville.
Thanks. We're using that for the mic.
Great.
I'll speak up. Mike asked me for some bullet points, and so here they are. Actually, my wife took notes as we were driving in today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on Ignacio. There's some new faces in here that may not know about Ignacio. So on behalf of the town of Ignacio, let me tell you about ICD. ICD is Ignacio Creative District, and they started about 2019. We started this movement, and we see it as an economic development for the area, as well as promoting the arts in the area. They posted our Christmas Taste of Christmas event, as well as our light parade. That was the first Friday of December, so put that on your calendar for next year. Not Noel night, the Taste of Christmas and light parade in Ignacio. That's where I want you. We had Santa Claus come in on a helicopter, jumped on the fire truck, went through town. It was a light parade. It's a wonderful event for everybody. IC did an amazing job. Here's the thing, next spring around February, the process to certify is opening back up with Creative Industries, Colorado Creative Industries. And so they plan to finish their application process and get certified next year. So that's pretty exciting for us. If you didn't know, we have one of the best libraries in the area. I'm a little bit biased on this, I know. I'm on the board of the library, but they're going to have their Stuffy sleepover on the 21st of December. So if you got kids, it's an amazing adventure. They bring their Stuffy in, they take a picture, and then the Stuffy spends the night at the library and has great, amazing experiences with pictures, and the kids get a book like in the next day. So if you have any questions, I can talk about that a little bit more. Our school district has received some negative press in the last few months. And so I want to clarify something. I had the honor of going and celebrating our kids that have achieved the honor roll at the middle school. I didn't realize that over 34% of our students in the middle school have a 3.5 GPA or better. And that's a pretty amazing statistic. And so when you read some of these articles about what's going on in Ignacio schools, please know that they are doing a bang-up job. And so that's something I want to tell you about. Los Pinos Fire. I know we hear about the different fire departments. Los Pinos is expanding into the Arborles area. They're actually expanding that fire station, and hopefully in the next week, we will have an ambulance with the paramedics on site 24 hours a day, if you will, in Arborles. If for whatever reason Ignacio needs to run to town, that ambulance will come in and serve as primary in Ignacio. But we're going to have 2 facilities. I think that's a big thing. We have a huge area that the Los Pinos Fire District is responsible for, including Archuleta County and San Juan County in New Mexico. So that's a pretty large area. As far as the town of Ignacio, I'm proud to tell you, we got a lot of land and we're looking for developers. We're looking for people to come in. We've been working with some. We've got some almost shovel-ready projects. And so I think we're on the cusp of making some great announcements, but we're working with Timber Age, Frank Stitton, and some different folks. A lot going on in Ignacio. I'm trying to be fast. So that's my bullet points. Done.
Thanks, Mayor Trey, great update from Ignacio. We'll go to Mayor Ashley Tarkington from Bayfield.
I brought some slides today. I don't think I've ever done the slideshow, but I just want to kind of do a little recap, year-end recap for Bayfield. This is kind of what is going on, and that is a lot. This is a lot for Bayfield, especially the annexation, 228 acres. That's quite a bit going on there. But we're pretty excited about what those annexations could potentially bring. So I'll just go ahead and slide through these. Next thing I want to talk about is our Cinnamon Heights project. This is the property that the town purchased. It's kind of our answer to affordable housing. As you can see, this is what's going on. Our site engineering is almost complete. We did add 288 compliant units to our plan. This we've been working with. This is not a final project, but this is the board. This is kind of the direction we're going right now with our deed restriction, and we are working with Lisa. She's been a great help in that. We are looking for input. Please reach out to me if you have any ideas. If you've done this before, we would love to hear kind of your input on that. But this is kind of where we are as a board, and this has been a ton of conversation, but like I said, not a finalized plan at all. And then I just want to go ahead and forward. So Cinnamon Heights, these are 30 units in a subdivision that already exists. The roads were there, the curb and gutters there, the utilities are there. This was pretty much a no-brainer project for the town to purchase these lots. So we're looking forward to going through this project. We went through the grant interview with DOLA, and I don't see how we're not going to get invited to apply for the grant. It was a great presentation. We are shovel ready. We kind of have our ducks in a row. So looking forward to updating you on this whole project. And I will leave it at that.
I always love updates from Bayfield. They're always doing something. Something is always just shuffled to the ground somewhere. I don't think Commissioner Matt Solka was able to make it, so we're going to hear from Chuck Stevens. Good job.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chuck Stevens. I'm the county manager. Commissioner Salka, in fact, my entire board are at a CCI conference today, so they weren't able to be here, and Matt asked me to come in and give you a brief update, primarily on changes in our planning department, okay? Even when I was having coffee here this morning, a number of you engaged me and asked about planning department, what's happening. So our community development director, Neil Starkeybaum, he's been with the county for about 3.5 years. He resigned to move on to other opportunities. So his last day was December 2nd. So we're about just over 10 days or so of operating in his absence, and that's okay. We're challenged right now. We've got a couple of vacancies in the planning department, but we have some strategies to provide relief for the planners that are still on board. And we see this as a great opportunity. It's not often that you get a director position that comes open. And so I'll talk about how we plan on restaffing that. But first, let me just talk about what we're doing in the interim. Are we shoveling snow upstairs? Is that what's happening? Okay.
Roller skating.
All right.
I see.
So what we're doing, first and foremost, we're trying to contract for some temporary assistance just to provide immediate relief. So we worked with a local temp agency to get administrative assistance. So we've got a temporary administrator that might come in. We're doing an interview with that individual this week. And that person's job would be to work at our front desk, primarily in intake, to help with walk-ins, phone calls, things of that nature. That will allow our planning technician to focus on moving projects through without having to, answer the phone when the phone rings. So that's one thing that we're looking at. We're also, and I think I said this, but that interview should happen this week. That's just to ensure compatibility with that person with the team. So we're looking to move on that very quickly. We also have 2 on-call planning firms that we're working with that say they have capacity. They've worked in Southwest Colorado, so they're familiar with the area. It is a little unique, okay, that La Plata County doesn't have traditional Euclidean zoning. So there is going to be a bit of a learning curve for anybody that we bring in for on-call planning because our code is a little bit different. Our vision, though, with the on-call planners is not to have them take on the complex planning projects, is to have them take on some of the more rote planning projects like ADUs, splits, boundary adjustments, those things. So even though we don't have traditional Euclidean zoning, we expect that an on-call planning firm should be able to step right in and pick up the slack there. So we have 2 agencies that have told us that we have capacity. I'm working through my procurement team right now, and it's my intent to try and get those one or both of those agencies under contract by the end of this week. Okay, so we've got that. Interim director. I've been in a handful of meetings with an individual who is local, who is widely known and respected. I would say that we have agreed to terms conceptually, and now we are drafting a contract to bring in an interim director. If we can get that contract in place, that would start the first week of January. So I'm very excited about that. Not ready to disclose a name at this point, but I think we're very, very close. And then finally, as for the director position itself, it's not something that we normally do in La Plata County, but we are going to go ahead and use an executive search firm to do a nationwide search in this case. Okay, we want to make sure that we look and invite as many qualified applicants as we can to apply for this position. I think like a lot of you heard what Mike actually talked about, the labor market's going to be challenging. We're seeing that. We're seeing that across the county. I'm about 427 full-time equivalents on any given day. We have anywhere between 35 and 45 vacancies every week. I report those out to the board. And I think last week on Friday when I reported that out, I think we had 35 vacancies across the county. So about 10%. And that's, that's a challenge. We used to see, for any position in the county, we used to see, 50, 60, sometimes over 100 applications for one position. This year, we've literally seen 0 applications for positions. So it's incredibly challenging right now. So if you know anybody, I think we're a great organization to work for. Obviously, I have a bias, but I think we offer great compensation, great benefits, and it's a good place to work. It's meaningful work serving our community. So please point people to me directly if you want. I'll recruit them personally. But we are going to use an executive search firm. My HR department has narrowed the list down to, I think, 3 different companies that we're looking at. And we're talking to those companies this week, and we'll get that started as soon as possible. Now, that said, I am not going to rush to judgment. Okay, I'm not going to hire someone just because they're a warm body and they're available to start. Okay, we're going to be very thoughtful and intentional and deliberate with this hire. I think this is an opportunity to, it's tough when you lose a director, but this is an opportunity to definitely change things up in our planning department and see if we can't address some of the concerns that we've heard from this group over the years. And so I'm going to focus more on, when you hire, you're looking for either compatibility and capability. And I think we're going to tend to lean more towards compatibility with this job, bring someone in. I think they can learn our code if someone has a background in planning, but I don't know that that's going to be the top priority or criteria that we search for. I think it's going to be very important that we get the right person in for our community to try and make some changes in that department. Last thing, the board adopted the budget on Tuesday, 1 week ago today, and included in that 2023 budget, we increased the staffing in the planning department by 2. So we're adding a new planner position, and then we're adding a new planning engineer. So we've got some temporary assistants, we've got some contracted assistants coming, potentially got an interim director coming in, and then we've made some structural changes to the department itself. But I've got to hire those positions. Okay, so I need people to apply. If you know anybody, please have them apply. I'll pause there and just see if there's any questions and check my time too. I don't remember how much time. I'm good. Any questions on planning? I know it's important to a lot of you in this room. Okay, I'll loiter smartly afterwards and you can grab me and ask me. Budget season, I mentioned that the board adopted the budget on last Tuesday. We're very excited about that. Contained in that budget is also our radar project. The regional weather radar system is coming online. So last week we had a firm under contract, and notice to proceed was issued. So we're really excited about that project. That's been a long time coming. Radar is going to be placed out at the airport. So we've got a lot of work to do here over the winter. We need to get an MOU in place with Tony. We need to get some land use process started because, you know, even the county has to go through a land use process. So we've got to get a land use process started. We've got some FAA permitting that can be done here over the winter. So we're going to try and focus on getting the administrative tasks accomplished while there's snow on the ground. And then in the spring, looking to break ground on that project. Barron Weather Systems, or Barron Weather Inc., I think is the company. You know, a firm with outstanding resume and references, and we're very excited to have them on board and partner with them. I think, Clark.
When's it going to be up?
By contract, it is supposed to be done by March of 24. Okay. So like all of you, I know that we've been experiencing a lot of construction delays and supply chain issues. So that's what we, you know, are shooting for, is March of 24. But we'll be patient too, because we know that there's been a lot of delays on construction projects, and it is what it is, but we'll deal with those as they come. Okay. I think that's all I've got for you today.
Thanks so much.
I know.
Questions?
I know, it's the season, I guess, right?
I guess I would ask, those vacancies, how many of those are those concentrated in certain divisions within the county or just broad?
Yeah, no, they are. So I think we have 11 patrol positions open in the sheriff's office. That's a challenge between patrol and detentions. We always have a lot of vacancies in our sheriff's office. Our human services department, that's just hard work. Okay, that's just really challenging work. You're dealing with people who are literally having the worst day of their life when they walk through the front door of Tin Burnett. Okay, they're there for a reason, whether it's child protection, adult protection, supplemental nutrition assistance, food stamps, those kinds of things. So people are down, they're having a hard time. And our caseworkers that are engaged with them, that's a really stressful job. And that's a high turnover job even before COVID. So we always have vacancies in human services. It takes a special person to work there and to work there for a long period. And other than that, I think it's just routine. I'd say human services and the sheriff's office are where we're focused for vacancies.
For the local radar weather, how is that information going to be distributed to the public?
Great question. Thanks for asking. It'll tie directly into the National Weather Mosaic. I don't know how that happens. I know it needs a fiber connection. That was one of our challenges in finding the location. But we've been partnering with the National Severe Storms Laboratory. It's a division of NOAA since day one. They've helped us not only identify the location and do the radar modeling on the site, but they also vetted the responses to our RFP, because we don't have a radar expert in La Plata County. And so, you know, the responses that came back in, it was Greek to me. So we had a technical consultant under contract, and then we also used our partners at NOAA, and they vetted the technical responses. And one of the conditions in the RFP, one of the criteria was that it tie into the National Weather Mosaic. So how that happens, I don't know, but we have a team that's going to verify that it is happening before we do acceptance at the end of the contract.
Will the Durango weather guy survive?
You know, we talked to him years ago because we wanted his input, and so he was involved in helping us look at some of the early locations. So yeah, he definitely every once in a while he reaches out to me and asks what's going on with this project. I talked to both the Herald on Friday and then to the Telegraph yesterday, so I expect there'll be some media coverage on this here in the next week or so. Jack?
What's happening with the setbacks with oil and gas?
Oh, thank you, Jack. That's on my list and I totally spaced it. So Chapter 90 rewrite is the oil and gas chapter of the county's land use code. A couple of years ago, the state changed the rules through SB 181 about how oil and gas is going to be regulated in the state. It's transitioning from fostering oil and gas development to regulating oil and gas development. That triggered a need to rewrite our chapter in order to align with the state's new rules for oil and gas. So we've been going through a very public process. We've drafted the chapter internally, just like we did with the land use code. We did not bring in outside consultants. We drafted it internally. For the most part, we've aligned with the state. There are a few areas where the county has taken a different approach than the state. One of those areas is with setbacks. We had a public meeting last Wednesday night. We heard public comment, I think for about 90 minutes, maybe a little less. And then this Friday is a follow-up to that meeting. We're going to hear presentations from San Juan Citizens Alliance, as well as the oil and gas industry. The Energy Council is going to come and talk 20 minutes each to the board. And the board will hopefully give us policy direction on what they want to see with setbacks in oil and gas. So that's kind of what's happening next with oil and gas. I'm looking to adopt that chapter in 2023. Not sure of the timeline exactly, but hopefully first quarter. But I think that's pretty squishy. It really depends on public comment and how comfortable the board is, making sure that they feel like they've heard everybody and that they've weighed in and then given policy direction once they're satisfied that they've heard all the opinions that are out there. Okay, I've got to be over time now, right? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks for the update, Chuck. I think it's valuable to have a better kind of vision of everything you guys oversee from Sheriff's Department and Human Services. It's not just planning. So we appreciate the comments. Okay, we'll go to Councilor Kim Baxter.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on what Scott and Tommy said about housing. So our budget's been approved. There's money in it for the housing division to expand and to start some new projects. And I wanted to point out that the Adams View Overlook was the first of its kind. So it's in our Urban Renewal Authority area up there. And because of that, we were able to do some creative ways of paying for things for the developers. And so it made it such that they could offer workforce housing through that development, which is outstanding. And I want to thank the developers, the Zagave Construction, for working so hard with the city to make this happen, because it will take a public-private partnership between the city and other partners to make these things happen. Homes Fund, great asset for us. It really made it happen. EVA, council funding it. Scott, Tommy, everybody, I just want to say that this is great because it's an example, as you said, it's a model. And we've worked out some kinks. There may be some more kinks here, but this is a process that we can now take everywhere else and work with other developers to create housing for our workforce. And I think that's critical. Something that Scott didn't mention in detail, but up on Florida Road, there are city parcels. It was on the map. Those are we are working with the developer right now where the city will contribute the land and the development will happen and require workforce attainable housing. So the city is doing everything we can to be creative in making it happen. Infrastructure, land, all the things, funding that need to happen to get housing done so that the economic vitality of our community can continue to expand. Because obviously, as you've said, we're having trouble getting workers. Why are we having trouble getting workers? They can't afford to live here. So that's what we're really focusing on. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the RHA's commitment to the Economic Alliance. So the RHA has been through the past year a really challenging time because we've been trying to set up, originally we wanted to have a consultant come in who had connections in the housing industry and be able to help create what the RHA should look like and start getting projects happening. That interview process didn't work. And we did the same thing trying to find an executive director, which was incredibly difficult. Again, people can't afford to live here. It's challenging to find people with the qualifications because the front range, for example, is very, very competitive. And so we have to compete with them and we're a small community. So we said, okay, that's not working. What is working in this community? The Economic Alliance had done the 3-year funding strategy plan for Project Moxie. And they are already making this happen on the ground. The Catalyst Fund was one of the items there. The Catalyst Fund exists. The Catalyst Fund has a board. The Catalyst Fund is going to move forward. They have funding. They're going to make things happen. They're going to be applying for grants. Now, as some of you know, one of the challenges with grants is they fund projects, but they don't fund ongoing operations. They don't fund the person in the office who's making all the phone calls. They don't do that. So the RHA said, look, we will step up. And what we want to do is we want to fund that operational base so that the Economic Alliance and the Catalyst Fund, their rental programs, everything else that they're working on can be focused on the project and getting things done. They don't have to worry about figuring out how to maintain their office. So the RHA saw that as the perfect way that we could contribute. And it's basically a 3-year commitment. And the 4 municipalities are funding that through their, IGAs, they're intergovernmental agreements with the RHA. So this is great because it's all of us working together to make these things happen. And I just want you to know that that's the confidence that we have in the Economic Alliance. The RHA wanted to do this. Of course, we'll be reviewing your work. The other thing is in February, the council is going to have a 2-day retreat working on the sales tax, the 2005 sales tax, re-ups in 2026. One thing that we try to do is be prepared for that and have good, thoughtful conversations about if that gets re-upped, where should that money go? So that's one of the conversations that we're having. The other one is, do we want to, once again, realign the lodger's tax and what it funds? And so that conversation, those will be funding sources for the big conversation that we're having. So the big conversation is our strategic plan. What are our priorities? Housing is the #1 priority for the council in our strategic plan. So what type of funding magnitude do we need to make that housing program successful? And we have to look at what's the bandwidth that our community has to build and to develop, and how can we help support that, and how can we help fund that? So that'll be in February, and I'm really looking forward to that, because I think you all know that my passion is housing and a multi-generational community for us to live in, with all those wonderful amenities. I mean, that's what you elected me for, right? So that's been my passion, and that's where I'm heading with this. So speaking of which, you'll notice this picture is pretty old. Things have changed. And I am not running for city council again in April. I'm sorry, it's a little emotional. I decided to announce now because it is critical to the path that Durango takes in the future, to who you elect as your new city councilors in April. There are 2 seats open. I'm not running, so there's 1 seat that is not encumbered by an incumbent. And I wanted people to have time to think about this and to be thoughtful about it and to consider whether or not you're the right person to run or someone you know is the right person to run. Packet pickup starts in the middle of January, and I didn't want to surprise people by not doing it and have no one be prepared. I'm so happy to talk to anybody about what being a city councilor is like. It's incredibly rewarding. 3.5 years ago when I got elected, everything was different. We have a new city manager, very community-oriented city manager, very team-building-oriented city manager. We have a staff that's responded to that. We have a new finance director who has changed the way that we look at our finances, and we now have OpenGov so our community can see everything we're doing in the moment. We have a new budget director. We never had a budget director before. We now have very robust budgets from conversations that start with our strategic plan, that go to staff, that go to budget, that come back to council, and everything works in line. Scott is a good example of promoting from within the organization. Just 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 2 months ago, Scott was promoted to our community development director, and he's been showing who he can be. It's just awesome, as you all know, I've worked with him. So I have really enjoyed this position. You don't make very much money, but it's not about money. It's about what you can do in the future and provide. So please talk to me. Get to know what it's all about. Get some good candidates running, because you can't vote for good people if they don't run. And it's critical. We are on a good path. We need to keep the momentum going. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Kim. I think it's, I don't know if I'd say selfless, but I mean, I think it's vitally important. I think as a community, we really appreciate you letting us know now. I think your comments on getting engagement, getting good candidates to be them having the opportunity to kind of vet that process out and decide if they want to run, knowing early is super, super important. So we appreciate it. With that, we'll have our next economic investor meeting. I think Mike's going to make a couple comments, maybe specific to housing.
Yeah, our next meeting will be January 10th, which is the second Tuesday of the month. We'll continue to do second Tuesday of the month through 2023. Today's focus was public partners. There was a comment at the Chairman's Circle, and it was a kind of a legacy comment of, are public-private partnerships really working? It's same old, and my rebuttal was, come to an alliance meeting, because they are working. There's a change in the air. There's a lot of momentum around housing. Obviously, it's a community priority. Everybody's aligned. Not to say that the workforce is secondary. We still have rental assistance program out there through First Southwest Bank. Get online there. We still have internship programs available with Michelle. We'll talk more about those in January. In January, we'll have a board transition. We'll talk a little bit about what the Alliance's strategic initiatives are. One of those will be the professional services contract with the RHA. The RHA will maintain an independent board, an independent entity. It's simply a professional services contract with the Alliance. We will hire resources that will solely work on that. And of course, we'll participate in that. But there's still a lot of work to be done. Chuck, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for addressing the issues. And that's the work to be done. So with that, Jameson.
Yeah, I think when you talk about public-private partnerships, the comments that Mikey mentioned, I mean, you come to this investor meeting and I think listen to the updates from Chuck, listen to the updates from Ashley, what's going on in Bayfield, City, La Posta, the RHA transition. And I think those public-private partnerships are stronger than they've ever been. So it's an exciting time to be part of the Alliance. Yeah.
Are we gonna time machine back? Because I.
No, sorry about that, John.
I just was curious, I don't want to repeat.
I think it's going to take all of us a little while to get used to 2023.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Ease into it.
Jack, you're gonna need to wear a mask to this one, okay?
How about just duct tape me?
Is that joke too soon? Okay, did we talk about economic outlook?
No, Economic Outlook, FLC is sponsoring the Outlook. Again, I think it's its 30th year, is that correct?
Bank of Colorado is the new sponsor with us.
Bank of Colorado's new
31st
sponsor.
year.
31st year.
Yeah.
It will be January 5th, 8:30 to 11 at the FLC
Ballroom
campus in the
in
ballroom.
the Union. And Rich Wabakin will be there for his 31st. So if you've come and seen Rich in the past, he will be there again. That's amazing.
So we'll piggyback on that. You'll get some of, if you don't make that meeting, or if you did, we'll actually do a deeper dive on January 10th for Economic Outlook.
Okay, with that, stay warm.
Be safe
Have a
out there.
wonderful, wonderful holiday. We'll see you guys in January.